morning, Secretary Loizaga.
Good morning, Daph.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share on these two developments. I think the most significant one, of course, at this point is really the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. As you know, this is the leading global platform for the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction to actually ventilate, articulate, and advance the needs of the different regions in the world. So in particular, the Regional Office for Asia-Pacific, which is based in Bangkok, is the partner here of the Philippine government. I should say that we co-chair this particular conference. Myself, of course, as DNR, but really the lead here would be the Department of National Defense, because they host the Office of Civil Defense, of course, lead in the operation of the NDRMC. So we are here to support the work of the OCD. And of course, we were asked by the President, and an order was issued to the DNR to actually organize APMC-DRR after we accepted to host it, which was in 2022, formalization of which was around January of 2023.
Thank you. Any updates on this morning's event in Malacañang, ma'am?
Well, as you know, we are constantly trying to make our mining and minerals resource development industry more responsible to the environment. The Pim Awards actually was established some time ago in 1997, and they have been awarded yearly. We haven't been graced by a president since, I understand, 2015, or at least prior to the previous administration. So under the administration of President Aquino was the last time a president actually presided over the awarding ceremony. The thrust here of the president, and here we have made this very clear to the mining sector, from his first SONA, was those who extract our natural resources must follow the law. So as you know, the DNR is a small organization compared to some of the larger other departments. We still receive 0.48 of 1% of the national budget. However, we have tried as much as we can to update the different terms and conditions upon which we will be reviewing all the applications, whether they be for the large scale or the small scale mining operations. Responsible mining has been the main agenda of this DNR, and for some of you who may not know, we have inserted into the ECC conditions the linking of the Social Development Management Program, SDMP, which is required of mining companies, to actually be linked to the accomplishment of the SDGs. Apart from that, we have also looked at the local context to see what is really needed by the different communities. So, for example, if a stable, safe water supply is needed, that becomes part of what we call a negotiated resilience commitment from the mining companies. So the ones who were recognized today, and there were, I understand, 13 of which fall into different categories: exploration, surface mining, mineral processing, and research development, among others. And we had some very good candidates. There were about 35 who vied for these awards, only 13 of which actually deserved and actually received the award.
Thank you. Okay. In the interest of time management, because we do have to go back to the conference, let's take some questions. First about the Mineral Industry Environmental Award, and then later on the APMC DRR. Eden Santos, Net 25.
Good morning po, Secretary. May we know po kung meron tayong list ng mga mining companies who are violating the law, and then magkano po yung ilang percent po yung na-eco-contribute ng mining industry po sa ating GDP growth?
Okay, on the contribution to GDP, we are really at 0.5 of 1% at this point, no? And we have actually a video that we showed just to look at to show the history, no? And I think we can share that through the office here of Secretary Chavez, just to take a look at how much has really been contributed by the mining sector. yeah, not only to the economic component but to the social development component as well, no? So at this time, yun parang ang nako-contribute, but at the level of operation of our industry in terms of the actual area, no, na pwede pang i-explore, and of course within the law responsibly derive, no, the minerals therein. We really are at something like less than 3% of what has been identified as potential mineralized areas. So that's the land area covered, no? In terms of the, ano po yung isang question, ilan na po ang...
List, kung meron na po tayo mga list, names of companies na nagba-violate po ng law.
We can actually provide you with that. Just for your understanding lang, where there is case build-up, mga detalye po ang hindi pwede namin po i-share kaagad. Kasi po, that is part of the cases that are being built up against these individual operations, no? So we can provide that list also through... At this moment po, we are monitoring several. I cannot release the names to you at this point, but we will give you a list of those that have been clearly now along the way towards cancellation or cease and desist. No?
Tuesday New, DZBB, please.
Good morning, Secretary. Follow-up lang po dun kay Eden. 0.5 kanyo ng GDP, yung contribution ng mining. Hindi po ba maliit yun kumpara doon sa destruction na ginagawa ng industry as a whole sa environment natin dito sa Pilipinas?
I think you have to contextualize that answer, no? As I said, in terms of the total mineralized, excuse me, identified areas na pwedeng maka-extract po tayo ng minerals natin. Sorry. Medyo namamaos na kasi po these last few days. You will need to weigh not just, okay, the environmental impact, okay, against the economic impact, but also the social impact and the scale of the potential resource na meron po tayo. So, the idea po ngayon is to identify two things. Ilan ba talagang kailangan natin in order to construct the infrastructure that we are planning and have been under planning for the last administrations? Saan po manggagaling yan? Cement, for example. Saan po manggagaling yan? Mag-i-import pa tayo ng cement or pwede po natin i-produce yung cement dito po? So lahat po ng mga infrastructure projects, nangangailangan po yan ng cement. Nangangailangan rin ng steel. Nangangailangan pa ng ibang sand and gravel components. Among the mineral resources ng bansa are the metals and the non-metallic. Sa non-metallic po, nanggagaling po dyan ang semento. No? So, when you weigh the environmental the impacts, no, versus the potential value socially, economically, dapat po sa tamang konteksto po yun. No? So, what we are doing now at the DNR is really two things. No? We are actually establishing through the National Natural Resource Geospatial Database kung saan po ang known mineralized resources natin sa buong bansa. Then we are superimposing, no, saan po talaga pong may mga permit, may mga exploration permit, mga mineral ready processing, MPSA, mga FTAA. And we are looking at the potential for what we need as a country in order to be on the kind of infrastructure trajectory na kailangan po natin para umunlad. No, that's the first one. The second one is we're also looking at what sort of minerals are needed for the transition to renewable energy. The components po ng renewable energy technologies are very heavily demanding on nickel, on copper. No, in particular, marami pa po dyan, but I'll just concentrate on those two. No? Saan po manggagaling yung dalawang yan? When we want to establish our wind farms, when we want to build the batteries for our EVs, i-import ba natin yan? O magproproduce ang Pilipinas kasi meron po tayo yan? So, when we look at environmental components, The department follows the mitigation hierarchy. Alam ko po na I mentioned this already before. We understand that minerals are needed in development. Okay? However, we have established what we call a mitigation hierarchy looking at the potential environmental impact of the extraction and processing of these minerals. What does that mean? The first principle is you should not do any harm. Alam po natin, anything that we do in terms of altering the landscape, whether it's pag-extract po ng mga minerals or pag-build po natin ng mga bridges, roads, mga kabahayan, mga buildings, all of that will alter the ecological integrity of our environments. No? So we cannot say na we can avoid the harm. No? The next principle is you must minimize. Okay, so when you establish a set of guidelines, you must look at the potential for minimization of the impact. Ang pangatlo po doon is we understand that this will be the impact. You must then reduce, actively reduce. So when we look at what is being applied for, we look for that as well. Where we cannot do 1, 2, 3, we need to be able to compensate. What does that mean? You disturb a specific ecology. You are bound by law to rehabilitate. So we have a law that actually provides for progressive rehabilitation. Meaning habang nagmimina po, you cannot go beyond a certain area without rehabilitating first bago po to go on to the next area. That being said, ecological transition takes time. No? So these awards na pinamigay this morning actually recognize some of those efforts. So there's an award, for example, to look at the best mining forest restoration. We also look at, again, to go back to the social component, how much do you give back by law and beyond. Meron po mga kumpanya that are giving beyond what is required by the law. I won't name them here because you might think I'm campaigning for them. But there are those that go beyond the 1.5% annual based on the gross operating expenses that go to social development and management programs. So ginagawa po namin ngayon is this. Tinitignan po namin, how close are you to a protected area? How close are you to our historical and cultural important site? No? How close are you to the water systems that will actually be providing safe water to the communities? Secondly, how much have you given back to the social services that support the development of the community? So this include putting up of the health centers and maintaining them, the school buildings, the erection of the school buildings, the provision of scholarships, and all of that is required by law. Again, there are companies who do go beyond that. And so...
Okay. All right. Harley Valbuena, DZME.
Hi, good morning, Secretary. Still in line po with the mining sector, may we have an update on the discovered illegal mining operations in Paracale, Camarines Norte, wherein some Chinese workers were nabbed?
Yes. On the potential criminal charges, no, I will not go into that because the case build-up is ongoing. What we know is that, in fact, this operation has a history. And in 2023, we also know that they had completed their permitting requirements and had been permitted to operate. However, now they have been found to have been operating also beyond the area where they have been permitted to operate. And of course, there is the presence of foreign workers. And I'll stop there kasi po kine-case build up po namin ngayon together with other authorities, other agencies. No? This is a small-scale mining processing operation. So as you know, in terms of the small-scale operations, there's a heavy local government and local community component. No?
Follow-up lang po, ma'am. Are we aware of this matter na napasok na rin po ng foreigners, particularly ng Chinese, pati po yung illegal mining operations po sa bansa.
Yes.
So possibly po meron din pong presence ng ibang foreign or Chinese workers sa iba pang illegal mining sites.
I believe presence of foreigners is a very great possibility. Yes. As you know, I think it was last year, we also apprehended, together with authorities, an operation in the border of, I think it was Cagayan de Oro and Iligan, in the upland areas that had foreign workers also conduct.
Disaster risk reduction. There were some partnerships promoting, of course, biodiversity and nature-based solution, partnerships by the government with the private sector on addressing disaster risk. Very important as well. Would you like to share some of that?
Sure. Thanks, Steph. So one of the increasing calls for disaster risk reduction globally is to really tap into the resources of the private sector. We all know that because of fiscal constraints, dito rin po sa Pilipinas, hindi po natin kaya lahat, no, in terms of the government having to bear the cost. So we are looking at a broad range of partnerships that have potential to actually bring risk down. So among those, and linked to our work, actually linked din dito po sa conditions sa pagmimina, is biodiversity conservation and how that actually leads and can contribute to disaster risk reduction. So biodiversity conservation kasi po, there are several key elements, one of which is habitat conservation. When we conserve habitats to protect the species, you actually are preserving the ecology, the ecological balance of the place, and therefore you are ensuring that ecosystem services like water supply, potential flood control, soil management, soil erosion control are also within that particular investment. So as part of our work on biodiversity conservation and what we're trying to push now at the DNR are three things: habitat conservation, species-specific risk, no, and thirdly, enforcement. We cannot do this alone. So what we've done at the BMB and at the DNR in general is we have selected conservation partners. In the case of the 6 species actually, no, in terms of this partnership, the Philippine eagle, the Palawan kakatu, Philippine kakatu, ang mga pangolins, tamaraws, marine turtles, and the dugong. Each of these have a conservation partner linked to that. The Philippine Eagle Foundation for the Philippine Eagle. Sa Palawan, Philippine Kakatu, ang Katala Foundation. World Wildlife Fund is doing the dugong and marine turtles. The pangolin and the tamaraw are being taken care of by the Zoological Society of London. Minerge po namin ang work program ng Biodiversity Management Bureau at itong mga conservation partners. How do we then get this funded? So we have species-specific funding that we got in the 2024 GAA. No, for each of the 5, yung pangolin lang ang walang species-specific funding pero hinihingi pa namin na pwede sana meron. And we said to the 5 conservation partners, tulungan naman po, magtulungan po tayo. How are they going to get funding? So the SM Group has provided a platform. The platform will be through their BDO banking services. Through the ATMs, you can actually donate. Directly po ito sa mga conservation partners. Wala pong papasok na pera to the government. No? It will go straight to the conservation partners in terms of your ATM use. No? You can donate there. There will also be the use of the retail platforms in terms of merchandising, in terms of donation boxes na malalagay po in terms of the mall operation. So both the banking and retail platforms, we're just starting po with this main corporate partner, pero we have already queries who else can join. And this funding will go directly to WWF, to Philippine Eagle Foundation, etc. But what's important is we establish how biodiversity conservation can actually lead to greater potential for nature-based solutions, not just to climate change adaptation and mitigation, but to disaster risk reduction by their control of the ecology, not just land, but also our oceans. No? And yun po, nag-signing po kami kahapon to formalize that partnership. So all the NGOs were there, as well as the representation from the SM Group. to then work on shared goals in terms of conservation, climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction. Sorry, mahaba yung explanation.
That's very nice. Okay, let's move to Sam Medanilia, all the way in the back. Business Mirror.
Good morning, ma'am. Balik lang po ako, ma'am, regarding dun sa na-mention yung parang magko-conduct ng inventory yung DNR ng mga existing na areas kung saan may high mineralization at saka yung mga existing na mining firms operation. Yung kasama po ba, kailan po natin expected ma-complete yung inventory? And will this include yung na-mention po kanina na parang presence ng illegal mining, tsaka yung mga foreign workers na hindi naman allowed dito magtrabaho? Thank you.
So two things po yan, ano. In terms of establishing kasi yung geospatial information tungkol doon sa natural resources natin, no? So as you know, meron po tayong ina-establish na tinatawag na National Natural Resource Geospatial Database. Ano po yung kaibahan nito sa mapa, no? In terms of a map, you're looking at a specific location. In terms of a geospatial database, you're looking at a specific location in relation to something else. No? So, it gives you the next step, the next level in terms of the analysis kung ano po yung nangyayari doon. But the first requirement is to finish the geospatial database. So, ngayon po, the known resources ng bansa are already on a preliminary database, no? So meron na po tayo. What we're doing now is we're overlaying all the different permits, whether they are local, national. So siguro po matatapos yan by the end of this year. Performance will then be next. So the observation and monitoring system will then follow. So kasi tinatarget po namin yan. Again, I'll go back to the budget ng DNR. So, in-expect po natin na ang DNR ay everything, everywhere, all at once. Sa 0.48 ng 1% ng buong budget, hindi po mangyayari yan. Okay? So, ginagamit po namin ngayon ay satellite imagery, no, in order to establish these locations and also measure and value what is there. This is also important kasi may pencast na po tayo ngayon, no, in terms of the natural capital accounting ng Pilipinas. So, once the observation monitoring system is in place, targeted po yan, that's when we can also establish locationally kung saan po ang mga violations na nangyayari or kung saan po ang observation surveillance na kailangan gawin ang pwedeng mangyari. So, this is not an overnight system. Hindi po namin, kasi sa mapa, magdodrawing ka lang ng points, ganon. Hindi po yon yung ginagawa po namin. Rinirelate po namin doon sa, ano ba yung technical description ng mining processing permit mo? So, minamapa yan talaga. In terms of the National Natural Resource Geospatial Database. The total number of hectares na medyo known mineralized sa buong bansa is about 9 million hectares. Okay? So, kung isipin nyo, medyo malaking area yan, almost 1/3 ng buong Pilipinas ay meron some kind of mineral na pwede pong magamit for development. No?
Ma'am, on another topic, yung regarding, mag-ask lang rin po ako ng update dun sa operationalization ng loss and damage fund. Kailan po kaya natin expected itong maging fully operational?
Okay, sa loss and damage fund, there are two things. No? Yung host country agreement, tinatapos po namin ngayon, and that will be signed between the UNFCCC and ourselves, no, as the host country for the fund board. So pag in place na yan, there will be now the first board meeting after that will be dito po sa Pilipinas. So in December, there will be a meeting here of the Loss and Damage Fund Board. Tayo po ang host niyan. And we hope that there will be certain agreements reached. One is who will be actually funding, no, the Loss and Damage Fund Board. Ngayon po, yung pumapasok lang ay countries, no. The whole idea of the board and the fund is actually so that there can be funding sources from other than countries, no, specifically. Then the next question will be, who will be able to avail? Siyempre po, llamado ang climate vulnerable countries in terms of who will be able to avail. I have to say, small island development states and Africa, medyo nangunguna po sila rather than sa Pilipinas. Okay? Alam naman po natin gaano katindi ang problema nila. No? So the small island development states, particularly in the Pacific, andito po sila lahat in this Asia Pacific Disaster Risk Reduction Conference. And if I can just go back to the conference and how they are needing to avail precisely from this fund. Marami po sa kanilang nawawala na ng coastal areas, no. May ilan diyan na talagang they're already organizing migration, no, from their areas to other countries under special agreements. Kasi po that's how difficult their situation is already. Countries like Kiribati, Vanuatu, their conditions are far more extreme than dito po sa atin, no? Siyempre po, we don't diminish kung ano po nangyayari dito sa atin ngayon in terms of baha. Pero sa kanila po, wala pong kasanggang bundok or whatever sa kanila, no? They are exposed, they are vulnerable, their cultures are also being threatened because their cultures really revolve around their seafaring life, no, civilization. So sa kanila po existential siya on many levels: economic, environmental, cultural. So these are the ones that will probably be the first ones in line pag kino-consider na. Right now, the funding of the board still is at around less than $700 million. Most of that will actually be used in setting up the operations of the fund. Yun po yung sinasabi po sa amin na we are not managing the fund themselves. Alam niyo naman, the arrangement has been that for the meantime, the World Bank will be the repository of the fund. However, the rules and guidelines for the availments will be the board, no, that will decide. Papa.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Kyle Atienza, Business World.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, you mentioned earlier today that the DTI as well as the DNR are eyeing to incentivize mineral processing as Marcos government boosts the country's transition to renewables and the green transition in general.
Yes.
May we know the details of this plan and what raw materials or critical materials are expected to be covered by this incentive policy?
Well, there is no formal policy body yet, no, and an instrument. However, we are in full collaboration with the DTI in their promoting the investments in processing. And so nickel, of course, is one of those areas na talagang tinitingnan. And of course, we are looking at copper as well. So these are two areas, no? And I should say na marami pong interesado dito sa minerals natin. And I wanted to point out na we always talk about critical minerals, no? It's important we identify critical for whom. So again, I go back to my issue, no? Well, our issue in a way, we must first look to what our needs are in terms of our energy transition and the other needs in terms of our own infrastructure development to establish what our critical minerals are. Ang buong mundo po, of course, are looking at copper, nickel, cobalt, some of the rare earths, kasi kinakailangan po talaga yan in terms of construction, electronics, digitalization. Digitalization alone actually will be really driving the demand for process, no? So dito po, DTI is leading the way. We are not a department that can give incentives, as I said earlier. Ang ginagawa po namin ngayon is streamlining our permitting process while not losing the comprehensive, no, analysis that needs to be done when we take a look at what is being permitted in terms of extraction.
Last question, ma'am. The President also, during the event earlier today, urged the Congress to passed the bill seeking to impose margin-based royalties and a windfall tax profit on mining companies, or the proposed rationalization of the mining fiscal regime. Ma'am. Are there any programs or policies that the DNR is pushing to be integrated into this bill?
We fully support the DOF's position, and so we don't differ from anything that they have already put forward in terms of the fiscal policy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Last question. We don't have much time.
Sana
Clay-
APMC DRR.
Clay Padilla, PTV4.
Secretary, sorry, follow-up lang po sa question ni Harley. Para lang po mas maintindihan nila, in what ways foreign workers in the mining industry a cause for concern? And considered close na po ba yung sa Camarines, Iligan, and Cagayan? Thank you.
First of all, it's illegal to have foreign workers by law, no? In your operation, unless there are specific highly technical positions na kinakailangan talaga yung advice na gano'n, no? Yung technical capacity na gano'n. It's certainly a concern. And so we work very closely with our other partners, not just I would say the local authorities, but certainly with our partners in the Department of Defense. And of course, DTI and DOLE. No, we'd like to have closer cooperation to see whether may pumapasok ba talaga na may dokumento, no, na tama. And so I'll leave it at that. There's a lot of cooperation that's ongoing between the different agencies. So maybe I can just say, what was the other question? Yeah, so there's a process, no? Yung sa Cam Norte, they're already CDO'd, no? And so the process requires them to show cause why they should not be cancelled. No? So may proseso yan. There's a time element. But certainly, looking at the situation, it's not looking good for them. No? Secondly, maybe I can just add a little about APMC DRR.
Yes. I was going to
Okay.
ask.
So just for information, so the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction has three main themes that it's actually pursuing. Disaster risk financing, that's innovative kasi po we know that regular development funding, no, and financing cannot really fit, okay, the needs of the specific vulnerable and exposed countries. So disaster risk financing is calling for more innovative instruments, perhaps some bonds, perhaps the participation of the private sector as well in really trying to support the decrease in exposure and vulnerability of different communities and sectors. No, may agriculture dyan, manufacturing is also affected, and of course others like telecoms and water systems are all affected. So disaster risk financing really to bring down the risk and risk transfer. No, so yung design ng mga insurance products namin dapat angkop dun sa nangangailangan. So we're looking at better insurance for MSMEs, for example, that are part of the supply chains of the big ones, and those that are independent as well. The second one is inclusion. So there's a big push towards what they call yung intersectionality, no, yung paghahawa ng vulnerability ng different groups. For example, gender related to poverty, related to disability, for example, or age, no? So hindi po simple yung idea ng vulnerability ng isang tao. It's attached to their identity, no? And particularly the gender issue is important. The third one is localization. Kailangan po talaga these responses have to deal with the context, the local context talaga. Local governments are the frontliners here, and local communities as well. So localization is a big issue. To give you some idea of the numbers, no, we had expected around 3,500. The last conference had in Australia had about 2,500, no, individuals. Ang total natin ngayon, no, in terms of those registered and needing badges, is actually about 7,000. Okay. Of course, that includes our security and our technical. But if you were to do only a delegate count, the delegate count, and DICT is the one who's maintaining this database for us, is at 5,000. No, so as some of you would have seen yesterday, medyo puno ang plenary hall natin, and I have to say that the President's keynote was very well received by the United Nations and by many of the delegates na talagang they came up and they said that they were so impressed by the President's grasp dito po sa disaster risk reduction, climate change, mitigation and adaptation. So I just want to share that we are so far considering this in a very positive note, no, in terms of the response of the call of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Philippines to attend. No, personally, I am very grateful for the attendance of the Pacific Islands. Marami po tayong pwedeng matutunan dito sa resilience ng mga Pacific Islanders, and there is a lot of traditional knowledge that we actually can share and they can share with us. We are the bridge, as the President said, between the Pacific Islands and the rest of Asia. And so we are uniquely positioned to actually host this conference, I think, at this point in time. So that's about it.
Yeah, I was about to ask you for a closing remark about it. We're halfway through the conference. It's 2 more days.
Yes.
And any last minute or any wishes that you're thinking about as the conference ends?
Medyo biased po ako. Okay. I'm looking at the science and technology component to see how, in fact, we can learn from what other countries are doing. There are a number of developed countries, of course, offering their technologies and their knowledge. But again, I'm biased towards learning from the Pacific Islanders. They have a way and a culture that has actually led them to survive all this time. So the theme that I post in my messages, again, you have a region that has faced so many perils, but you have a region that also has a lot of promise. So it's really a triumph of the promise over the perils that we face. And these islands, the Pacific Islands, have really shown the way in terms of that particular triumph. So marami pa tayong matutunan in this regard.
Ang sabi naman ng ibang mga delegates na nakausap ko doon, Secretary, marami rin sila natututunan sa Pilipinas, most especially yung focus natin sa community-based disaster risk reduction, at saka yung focus ng national government for the people talaga.
Yes, I think that's one of the key points also of the President, and the special representative of the UN Secretary General really has made this a point. I don't know if you saw it was highlighted in his statement that he's calling the Philippines a lighthouse.
Yes, yes.
And one of the areas as well, apart from the community basis, was the way the different departments are working together. So it's not lost on them, no, na in terms of the preparation for this, lahat po talagang tumulong. Everybody, including of course PCO for the media and communications, but DSWD, DOTR, DOST, DILG, lahat po tumulong talaga to make this a successful conference. But in reality, in terms of operation, at the OCD and at the NDRMC, there's some real substantive collaboration going on, no, in improving systems and addressing disaster risk locally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Loizaga. I think this concludes our press briefing. Lots of topic today. Thank you so much, Malacañang Press Corps.
Thank you.